Welcome to What's the Effort?
What the F?
Hello, everyone. Hello. I am still learning, and I'm sorry we're just a couple of minutes on the late side. And we shall see. I believe that it says we are live. Hi, Lance. Good to see you. Good to see you. Thank you for being here. Now I know we're live for sure. And it just goes to show, guys, I've been 6 months. I thought I knew how to turn it on. Anyhow, welcome, welcome, welcome. I have an extremely special guest today. I love all my guests, but I love Mrs. Due Diligence even more. Melissa Palmer is a dear, dear friend, and I am so honored to be anywhere near her path as she goes down this road. So, Melissa, hi.
Hi, Effie. Hi, everyone.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
All right. I know that you're very busy, and I want us to talk about some of the things that are happening. So, thank you, Lance. So, I would like for us to talk about some of the things that you are up to.
Sure.
Now, I love the melpalmer.me. That's awesome. That is where you are on both YouTube and on IG. Is that correct?
That's correct. And on YouTube, you have to have an underscore after the me. So at melpalmer.me and then the underscore. Exactly. Thank you.
All right. So there we are. That's the one for YouTube. It's got a little underscore underneath there.
Great.
What's with the underscore? Why the underscore?
It wasn't available just to have the melpalmer.me.
I see you.
That's all.
Hi, Gabriela. All right. I got it. Yeah, that's what happened with me. That's why I have the underscore after Effie. You know, what the Effie wasn't available. So that's interesting. Well, so Melissa, for those of us who have been in sub 2, we all know how excited we are about this. And for those that might be not in sub 2 or in Gator or just in real estate as a whole, there have been many, many people who have who are trying to lend money privately and who have lost money, both in the community as a whole, in the real estate industry, in our own private groups, the creative group. And this won't do. This will not do. It absolutely is unacceptable. We have to change things. And Melissa is the person. She's the one to change it. And I have to start by saying, can you explain a little bit about why it has to be you? What are your qualifications, girlfriend?
Sure. Well, first of all, it doesn't have to be me. I think it's funny that this industry has been riddled with fraud as we've known it forever, right? People say, don't get invested in it. Don't deal with real estate. There's all this fraud. Somebody's going to rip you off. The market's crazy. I think depending on when you're talking about real estate, whether it's the 80s, 90s, 2008, 2020 or today, the through line is everybody says real estate is crazy. And so it's like, that's the through line, and fraud is not new in this. So back to your question of why me? Well, because everybody's been getting ripped off for the longest time, and everybody's saying like this is a problem, and nobody's been doing anything. And so it doesn't have to be me, but I happen to have a background in federal investigations, and I found myself TCing a bunch of other people's deals. I was seeing people take private money lenders that should have been private money partners because they had no intent on refinancing the property out, barely any cash flow, and really no personal income to be able to compensate for this massive balloon payment that they needed eventually. But we see this trend where people are taking private money on because they're told leverage other people's money. And of course you should, but you need to also think through the consequences and when it's due, like what happens then? Because I was helping people quit claim properties to their lenders, which is a solution, but it's not the agreement. The agreement was they get their money back with some payments, not a house that they didn't necessarily want. And so I have this background. I saw these problems, and I personally experienced these problems with some overconfident people that had no ability to execute on their promises. But we are in a group that happens to desensitize you to a lot of these issues when somebody happens to be a leader and happens to be recommended and is put on a pedestal. And so for me, it was a combination of all things that made me say, everybody's saying this is a problem. Everyone knows this is a problem. And everybody wants either the criminal justice system to help them, an educational organization, or one person. And at the end of the day, like, none of those things are helping the situation. And I saw a unique opportunity to be able to provide some insight as a consultant. And so that's, anybody could do it, but not really. Like, you have to have the skills, the background, the experience, and other people could either have them already or acquire them. But I'm in a position where I've got it now, and I see the opportunity, so I seized it.
I am so glad you did that. I am so glad you did that. So I think that as a group, I see Julie is here. I see Deb's here. I see a lot of people here who already are like, hey, what the heck? I trusted this person. This
Yeah.
person is a leader. I expected them to perform. And as we have seen, there seem to be two kinds, right? There have been the kind that just seem to have like criminal intent, like Rick. Oh, sorry. Did I say anything? Anyhow, some people that shall stay unnamed. But anyhow, the point is there are people who are either criminally intent or incompetent. And actually, it may not make any difference. Because if your money is gone, your money's gone. So if the person is incapable of performing, we don't throw them in jail because they're stupid anymore. Maybe we should go sit a day in jail. Help us to understand. Don't do that again. But the point is that even though there are two types, there's only one result. And that is that somebody's money is lost and gone. So the need is very real. And I'm so grateful that from a negative experience, a personal experience that you yourself went through, you took this thing and you just said, oh, no, we don't. We're going to fix this. And you came up with using the skills that you've had your entire life to offer a solution and to better this process. How freaking lucky are we? Guys, drop a fire, drop a thank you, drop a something if you feel that we are lucky that we happen to have Mrs. Due Diligence in Sub 2 and in our communities. So I do definitely want to say thank you, because honestly, it's long overdue and no one did take the bull by the horns. So I am so grateful to see that you're here and that you are ready to do this, because boy, do we need it. Boy, do we need it. So now, as you can see that, I'm not the only one that thinks that. And we do have the issue of how do we approach it? Because it seems so overwhelming for someone who has been guarded by the loss of other people. Other people have lost money. I've caught wind one way or another. I've stayed away from that, stayed away from this, and I am not immune. But even as someone who hasn't lost the money, I have on occasion gotten on a phone call with someone who is causing people to lose money and basically give them my royal way, give them royal shit, to say, come on, you got to do something. And some are amenable to correcting their ways and some are not. But it's about all anyone can think. and it's not truly effective because prevention is the way to go. So,
Right.
can you talk to us a little bit about, we've heard that you're doing that, we're going to be brought forward with a program, and I know that your site is up and that you have started to offer services. And am I correct in thinking that you're doing, uh, you know, a couple of different things, the one-on-one consulting, the due diligence, and the partnering?
Yeah.
Oh,
So
and
I
I
took partnering completely off. It's due diligence for lenders, borrowers verification, and one-on-one consulting. I'm not partnering with people. I've got everything I need as far as assets, and I'm acquiring insurance books of business right now. So um, that's that's what I'm doing on my own acquisitions. But when it comes to my service, yeah, it's one-on-one due diligence from the lender side, and then borrower's passport, um, or verification, for the borrowers. And so
okay.
those are the services I'm offering, and I've been consulting for about a year now. I started TCing with Caleb Christopher at creativetc.io as a contractor, and then I also had a bunch of clients come to me separately. And what I found is, as a TC, you'd think people want a TC, which, let's equate it to mechanic. People go to a mechanic and ask for their oil to get changed, and that's like going to a TC and asking for them to transaction consult on your, or transaction coordinate uh, on your deal. But what people actually want is for that mechanic to also tell them how to change their oil themselves, so they don't have to use you next time, and then ask you about the car and maybe even how to drive. And so you find out that it's this you actually want consulting, and you want to have a lot more information than just having your oil changed. And so I started offering consulting once I realized TC services was so much, people were asking for so much more. I was deal structuring, I was underwriting, I was helping with exit strategies. I found out I was closing when I had done, I'd say, like 16 seller walkthroughs for somebody. And then once I stopped doing seller walkthroughs because they were just so time consuming, and I'd be handling seller objections for like an hour and tracking them down and hunting them down. The second I stopped offering these seller walkthroughs, they weren't closing any deals. And I was like, oh, damn, I was your closer for a very cheap price. So, so back to the TC analogy, people think they want their oil change, but they actually want the full service and a teaching process as well. And so I started consulting a year ago, and now we've seen the tides, when sun, moon, stars shift. I'm like, hey, general consulting is fine and I can do it, but it doesn't bring me joy and it's not a specialty. Whereas this is my specialty and this is where I'm focusing my efforts. And so any consulting that I do is still due diligence related. And honestly, you can't get a whole lot in a 1 hour session. I'll offer it if that's really what you want. But at the end of the day, if you want to learn about the whole car and you want to be taught how to do it and you want to do that, you have to bite the bullet and pay for the full due diligence service.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. I totally get it. I have used you also as a TC, and I completely get it, because you're like, but wait, what about this and what about that? And I respect and understand that that is consulting. It's not a TC's job to do more than change the oil. And I think that that analogy works quite well, because a lot of times people have gone into the auto mechanics and done that. They've had the experience when they're younger and such, so that they understand that, hey, if you want the full package, pay for it, and we'll happily provide it. But otherwise, you're abusing his time, because it is time. So
And you wouldn't do that to a mechanic. You shouldn't do that to your TC.
exactly. So now, talking about what you don't do to your mechanic, you shouldn't do to your TC. Let's use that as a bridge to go into, how should you be lending money? Because, institutionally, we know that it's banks that lend money, or credit cards. And we know what credit cards do. And we know what banks do to some degree.
Yeah.
So can you talk about that difference, what you have seen with people doing as trying to become private money lenders and what banks do?
Sure. Well, there's two schools of thought for people who are doing private money lending, and that is one, invest in the deal, not the person. So make sure that it's a really good deal and you underwrite it well. The other school of thought is invest in the jockey, not the horse. The person's what matters. And I say both of those are kind of right, but both of those are kind of wrong because you can't invest in the deal because deals don't default, people do. You have a really good deal and a really bad person, that person's still not going to pay you. And it doesn't matter if it's a good deal or not, you're still going to have a massive headache trying to get that property back. And that's assuming you got secured in the first place because a lot of people are doing this from a place of a first time, new. They're expecting other people to do the work for them. And if you're investing with a bad person in the first place, chances are they didn't secure you, right? Number two, back to the whole jockey, not the horse. Well, again, with people show their best face. They tell you their best examples. They always, I've talked to so many people that, how many deals are you doing a month? Because we're trying to figure out whether or not an embed TC works for them through Caleb Christopher's TC program. He will assign people to you. If you're doing enough deals a month, it actually pays for itself. And so people always misrepresent what they're actually doing to sound better. And, some of it's a little bit of ego and saving face and embarrassment, and some of it's lying. So back to the whole people drip honey when they want your money. So you can't trust the deal. You can't trust the person. And I say you have to trust the information. It's got to be verified. So if someone's background, education, and experience doesn't align with their exit strategy, for example, you got some people that are pitching a BRRRR strategy and they're doing it the quote unquote right way, which is getting properties at 30% ARV, but they've never done a successful flip and they don't have any credit. They've never done so you're going to do BRRRR without credit? No, you're not. You're not getting any loans from the bank to refinance out of it, no matter how good the property is. And so you have to really align with the actual information because BRRRR as a strategy on a 30% ARV is like killer. Yeah, that sounds great. But dig beneath the surface and it's nothing burger. So.
Totally. So, that is a very common thing that I have found too, that people will say they have done more than they actually have, or they just don't say it, uh, which is one of the reasons that one of my biggest pushes on newbies is to ask. They're like, "Oh, I want to work with you." I'm like, "Why do you want to work with me?" They're like, "Oh, I seen you on a video." I'm like, "Does that show your intelligence?" I mean, they're like, "Well, you must be experienced." I'm like, "Yeah, I've done 0 assets so far, and it's been 16 months. I've done a little Gator and I've done some PML. Yep, but ask. Don't assume. I'm
Right.
telling you, I have not. So why are you looking to me for guidance? I mean, it's one thing to help and to learn together, like I'm doing with co-living, just, learning together from each other. It's another thing to give someone your money. They're like, "I want to give my money to someone I trust. So can I work with you?" I'm like, "What's your name?" Yeah.
Yeah.
So it really, really surprises me that so many people can do that. There is, yeah, Gabriela, very true, very true. So I think that educating them and letting them understand that you can't bet on the jockey if they haven't already done it. If they've got a
Yeah.
track record, then great. And you can't just assume.
Right. And
Gabriela's
so
in the money.
yeah. And good people with bad deals might still pay as long as there's some pattern of behavior that you can draw lines back to see, like, hey, okay, maybe they haven't done this specific exit strategy before, but they've got a professional background. They've got an education. There's some sort of proof that they're committed to something, whether it's a job or an educational path. And they've got good credit, which means they can manage their finances. And but I do think it's really important to understand that there's shades of gray, and so somebody can have bad credit and be a perfectly bettable jockey. because they got an entire track record, and it turns out they don't have bad credit because they're not paying their bills. They have bad credit because they're a flipper and they do hard money loans all the time that are constantly pinging on their credit. So there's a lot of nuance to this, and people want to be so black and white. And a bankruptcy in somebody's record, would you loan to somebody with a bankruptcy? Maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe. Yeah.
And not to trick you, and the answer would be, well, what if that bankruptcy was because of a heart attack and their medical loans were 3 times the value of their house? That bankruptcy is not the concern of somebody who's dumping 6 properties because they're incapable of paying their bills. That's very different. So
Right. Right.
it's
Totally.
nuance, and you can't have these hard and fast rules. You have to have this true understanding of what the situation is and whether or not it indicates whether somebody's trustable credit, as creditworthy or not.
Right. Right. So when Deb has a question that I'm going to come back to in a little bit,
Sure.
but if I'm correct, then the whole concept is not to bet on the deal, not to bet on the jockey, but rather to examine both and let the numbers and the data guide you.
Yeah, let the information speak for itself, because people will say things, and if they got nothing to back it up, what are we supposed to do?
Right. Which is going to eliminate people blowing up their own, for their own ego, what they have done. Because I personally think there's nothing wrong with being in 16 months and not having done my first asset. I've had somewhere between around 15 that have fallen through. But you know what? Pace says they fall through. And I'm trusting on the average that, I think he had said 1 to 13. And I'm now close, I'm at 15, 16. So somewhere down the line, it's going to come into my favor. So I'm not giving up.
Right.
But I also don't believe in letting people think, oh, you must have a huge portfolio. No, I've done some lending. And frankly, I was really, really lucky that the people, I happen to have chosen very good people who probably knew I'd come and beat them up if they didn't pay me. But the point is, it could have gone the other way. And it almost went the other way.
Yes.
Big time. So I think that we cannot underestimate that the data will make the difference, because it will show trends, and trends are something that you can rely on. One fault is not the end of the world, like one thing that happened. But if you see that it's happened again and again and again, then that's an issue.
And one fault that's recent that has a very defensive, poorly responding person, I don't want to deal with you until you get your stuff together.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
For that.
Yep. And I think that alone is worth a lot. To know that they're going to be vetted and that everything will come to light is going to encourage the people who blow themselves up to not do that. And there are people who have criminal backgrounds. If they have criminal backgrounds, then they should, in my opinion, they shouldn't be in our group. But let's at least bring that to light.
Right.
And now, if you don't mind, I know it's a little bit not quite the same direction as I was expecting, but I'm interested in answering Deb's question. She says, will there be a process for existing sub-2 members who have already defaulted on multiple lenders and sub-2 members and who are still inside of sub-2? Is there anything we can do about that kind of person?
So aside from being a student myself, I am not affiliated with sub-2, and this business is not affiliated with sub-2. So I cannot speak to the sub-2 process. What I can speak to is what the vision is with the Yelp equivalent, and that is allowing people to review borrowers and lenders, right? So you'll be able to go in there and show proof of defaults, and if there's multiple, it says multiple lenders, then get the other lenders to get involved, and then that can be verified and that can be posted. And I'm having it work both ways. So if people are posting positive things, great, just show proof. I just want proof that someone was paid back and proof that somebody was secured or not secured. And so that's the process, and that's how that works. And I can't speak to Sub2 specifically because
Gotcha.
this is not a Sub2 business. This is my business that I started that I'm bringing partners on for, as you know. And so it's not, my partner is not the organization that owns Sub2.
Gotcha. Fair enough. Fair enough. And I love the idea that if a default is pointed out and brought to you as a verifiable fact, that it can be posted, and therefore, we can always say, well, you might want to, that Rick, whatever, that guy, you might want to check on the site and see if there's anything positive or negative. And actually, I would probably check every single time to see
Right. Well, and
what
here's
has
an
this person done.
interesting, yeah, and sorry, not to cut you off. I would say, that's one example, but that's one with a public record now at this point. There's judgments against him, and that's public. The scary thing that's happening, that people aren't necessarily, they don't have a forum to bring it to light. And what I'm hoping to solve here is all of the people that are that have no judgments against them, but have numerous lenders in that they're in default with. And those are the real scary people. The privacy policy here is going to be, it's a subscription-based service. And again, it's with verification. And so it's going to be posted if it's verified. And so if someone chooses to have a personally get verified and do the borrower's verification process, it will be as much as you want to show for your verification, but people can post their reviews, and their reviews aren't going to be including personal data, but they will talk about whether or not you paid your loan back. So that's going to be, it's private because it is behind a subscription-based service with terms of agreement, but it is available. Anybody, even if you don't go through the borrower's verification process, somebody else can leave a review, and then that's almost the equivalent of, if there's a business on Google Maps that's not claimed by the business owner, you can still leave reviews for that business, and that's how this would look. And it's really important because what we see and what we know to be the strategy for good reason is these single-use LLCs that have no credibility, no liability, no history. And so at the end of the day, the people are what matters, not these vacant front companies, essentially, because they're not businesses themselves, they're liability entities. And so we're not leaving reviews on your LLC, we're leaving reviews on you, because you're the one at the end of the day who, took the loan, whether or not you did it in the clout of an LLC. And people need to know that. And that's that's the service that's provided through a little bit of transparency.
Totally get it. Totally get it. And if have you determined yet what the subscription service will look like? And okay, that's all right. Because things are very, very fluid at the beginning, I'd like you to describe a little bit about how it is changing, because I've already talked to a couple of people who have said, hey, you're having Melissa on? I'm like, yep. Please, could you tell her that I wanted to be the first in line, and now there's a whole bunch of people ahead of me. How am I going to get myself verified? I want to get myself verified, as do I, guys. And, that process, I'm like, oh, poor Melissa, she's going to have so much business, she won't be able to breathe. What's going on? Tell us about the most recent developments, because as we can all imagine, as things are getting ready to completely come open, they have to change sometimes. So can you talk to us about the most recent updates?
Sure. So there's an evolution in bound, right? So currently, the way I'm offering the service is the one-on-one consulting, the due diligence, where we look at the deal, the person, and the verified information, or the borrower's verification, and that's for We look at your background, education, experience, your list of assets, third party verified, obviously background and credit, and then we present basically a presentation that's third party verified, because I'll talk to those references, anybody you've lended with before, have verification of mortgages that you've serviced successfully without
That's
like
called the borrower's package?
borrower verification. Yeah,
Borrower's verification. Okay.
and I call it like a real estate CV essentially. And so
It's like a what? A real estate what?
CV or
Oh.
your resume. And anybody can come up with their own resume, but it's not third party verified. And it comes back to like anybody can say anything. So then that's where you want to actually check the assets. And I recommend people do that for themselves. But if they want somebody to do it for them, I can do that. And this service will not be necessary once the Yelp exists, because then we can do the borrower's verification. You can have your profile, and that exists. But to serve the need for now, this is the in between phase. And so that's what I was already offering prior to, the transformation in the future plan. But it's the current offering, and it's what I've been doing for a bit now. So I do have a couple of borrowers already in queue that are getting their packages done now. I've already had a couple of lenders who've gone through the due diligence service, and yes, there is a long queue.
Yes, I'm sure there's a long queue. So when you say you've had lenders go through the process, talk about that.
Yeah. So I had somebody who wanted to lend. Honestly, I didn't think it'd be a non-real estate transaction immediately, but I had some people who wanted to lend on an asset-backed fund of sorts. And I
What?
say that because at the end of the day, there
Wait,
was
I didn't understand. I slow it down a bit. What did they want to do? There was a little echo.
they wanted to lend on an asset-backed fund of sorts.
Oh, interesting.
And so through the process, it tried to verify what's this fund, where's the proof of funds, what's the return, what's the performance. Let's look at the person, because we always say the deal, the person, and the information. So we look at the person, what kind of background, education, and experience do they have with this? What background, education, and experience does their team have with this? And at the end of the day, that was a very strange first due diligence process, but everything was unverified after I did all of the background.
It was all unverified?
Yeah. So background and record checks turned out good. Good as in there was no derogatory information.
Yeah.
But the person who was requesting the funds refused to participate in the process. So I couldn't ask him any questions. I did via email, and the responses were not helpful. And there was no education or experience that was found in his professional licenses and education searches. There were the people that he claimed were the professionals that were working on the actual fund itself were hidden behind a non-disclosure agreement, so I couldn't even confirm they existed.
Oh,
So,
that's interesting.
yeah, and so all of these are just things that come up that you get excited because you see the returns. And the returns,
Were they like 100%?
oh, they were insane. Yeah. So the higher the returns, the higher risk, right? And then when you've got these vague international operations and these offshore accounts, my master's was at Middlebury Institute of International Studies, and a lot of what they study is social change organizations and social justice, and a lot of economic and environmental impact. And so you're talking about mining operations. Now you're talking about the human slave industry. You're talking about international bribing. You're talking about a lot of things that we want to know and go down a rabbit hole if we were actually doing due diligence on that. But we couldn't even get past the person. So it's like something like that, I would say save yourself some money and don't come to me if somebody doesn't want to participate in the process because, yeah, like Deb says, it sounds too good to be true. It usually is. And, if
Yeah.
somebody's even willing to answer questions, I think that's a huge indicator for somebody you don't want to be handing your money over to because if they're so defensive even prior to losing all your money, I couldn't imagine what a nightmare it would be trying to get it back after.
But you're going to make 100%. What do you
Yeah.
mean lose? That's interesting. That's very interesting. It must have been an interesting one for the first. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Um, so you're doing the borrowers verification,
Yeah.
and you're meeting with lenders to check things out like that, which was kind of whack. And are you so what was it? I think you mentioned something about offering some kind of possible course, little mini thing.
Yeah. So because everybody's wanting to know the same things, I'm trying to create clones as we as we do. So I'm trying to do a little mini course for people that will give an overview, we'll give a lender's perspective, a borrower's perspective, and then some paperwork considerations. So it'll be four episodes in the course, and I'm working on that right now. Cough, cough.
Okay. Okay, that's great. And the four parts that you were thinking of, what's the breakdown of that again? Just so we can hear it, because I think we absolutely love and respect you, but we also need to understand that um, things do change. So
Yeah.
uh, as you're going to that start line, right? Uh,
Yeah.
so
So
what's it looking like? You said lending and borrowing and paperwork. That's
yeah,
great.
so one just being the overview of private money investing period, and then the lending lens, the borrowing lens, and then paperwork. Just
Oh,
something.
that sounds awesome. That sounds awesome. And then if you can make that available, then I think that it will probably answer a lot of the questions that you're getting asked over and over again.
Yeah, and that's a free service, and it's going to cost me a lot of money to do. So just be
Oh
patient.
my God, you sound like Pace.
Yeah, I
And
know.
I am giving it to you for free. But
Yeah,
but you are recreating yourself, by answering
yeah,
all those questions and having them, you know, there so that people can disseminate them and not have to keep knocking on your door and asking again and again.
yeah.
I think that's pretty awesome. Now, I understand that we're getting a lot of thanks, which is great. Everybody should be saying thank you. I think it's awesome. Um, now, you're going to be on stage with the two attorney generals, right?
That's the intent. Yep. So the Attorney General of California and the Attorney General of Utah will be speaking about fraud in this industry. So um, this originally was pitched because I shared my business and my offerings and what I was doing and with Pace at Community Camp, and specifically because Vina Jetty, if you recall, was pacing back and forth on stage talking about how much time she spends actually vetting the jockey because her stance is definitely betting on the jockey, not the horse. And of course, she does all this other due diligence on the asset as well. But I was thinking, wow, this lady's her time is worth a lot of money, and if I could even help her cut that down in half, that'd be huge. And so I had brought it up based on that, and then Pace and I started talking about my vision for the service as it continues to develop, and the you asked a question taking me down this rabbit hole, and I lost it.
Well, I wanted to know about you being on stage with
On
them and
stage
they're
with them.
sharing all
Yes.
these
Okay.
things. And
Thank
then
you.
and then
So
I imagine from that, Pace said, "Wait a minute, why are you going to Vina Jetty?"
Yes. So what happened was we had a meeting, a follow-up meeting where I was going to do his borrower's verification. And actually, I just reached out to Molly this morning so that we could get that process started. But he's like, yeah. We'll talk about that later. I'm going to have you talk after the Attorney General of Utah and California about fraud. So that's where this came and went. And when that shifted, I was like, I'm gonna get slammed because this is not our community. First of all our community's huge now as well, but also this is not even just us. This is open to a lot of the other mentorships as well. And
Oh
so
yeah. Oh yeah.
that's
Yep.
how this kind of continued to evolve, was based on him telling me he'd have me speak after those attorney generals. And so that is the intent. That will be Fright Night, Friday the 13th in October. And we don't have a full agenda yet, or what the speaking topics will be, but I imagine it's talking about the fraud and then talking about some of the solutions for that,
Yeah.
some of the preventative solutions for that fraud. Because here's the problem: the aftermath solutions are painful, and I'm trying to be the vitamin here, not the painkiller. And I
Oh,
know,
I love that,
yeah,
Melissa. The vitamin, not the painkiller.
take your vitamins.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
That's great. That's
If
great.
painkillers sold well, every attorney's $10,000 retainer would be paid like that. But here's the thing: you already lost a lot of money, so it's really hard to take your pill after the fact.
Absolutely. And that's what I think is one of the reasons that these guys get away with it, guys or gals, whatever, get away with it because people are devastated. They've been crushed. They've lost not just their money, they've lost their time, their hope, their belief. And now they have to, take the role on of being seen almost as an aggressor to go get back what was theirs. And they don't have it in them. They're just like, they just want to give up. And, I think that that's one of the things that they rely on,
Yeah.
you know, and
Well,
that's
sometimes
it's
it's not worth it.
yeah. Is it really worth it? The money's gone. Like, what assets does he have?
Yeah.
Would it help me to see him behind jail? Yeah, in my in my wildest dreams, but is it going to help my pocket get any better?
No,
No. So time is limited. Let's move on.
that's
You
right.
know, but I also think it was rather timely because uh, as the group has grown and as the industry has gotten into more desperate times, because people are desperate, more desperate right now. I think that it is too easy for people to take advantage, and it's been happening. And Julie says she knows someone who lost her home. Yeah, unfortunately. And, I think that when Pace finally, kind of stepped in, you were probably an angel sent to him in that regard because,
It's
what could Pace do other than say, didn't you watch the videos? And you're like, no. So this whole concept of saying we have solutions now, we've got ways to deal with it that can be, taking care of it. I think that that is huge because who else does? And it came out of personal experience and yet also personal skills, and it's creating personal opportunity. I love that. I almost want to like, it's interesting when you can take it's not even lemons. They're rotten, crappy shit lemons.
Hey,
And
you can make wine.
we
Maybe
won't,
not lemonade, but I can make wine with rotten.
yeah, really, and turn it around
Yeah.
to make it a solution for so many people instead of blaming the victim. Okay. I think that that is critical. And I'm grateful that you have those skill sets and the vision and patience to put it together. And I'm super grateful to Pace for having the community and the wisdom to see that he's not going to let you go to Vina. He wants to keep you in here for us, So
Yeah.
I think that part is, you know, he's just smart. He's a smart cookie. And yeah, I think that part is very important. And for people who have this experience in their past or are dealing with it presently, of having lost and been taken advantage of and been ghosted, and really worrying about their money and what's going to happen in their life, um, because of these incompetent idiots and or just criminals, criminal intent. I do encourage you to look at where Melissa is, because Melissa got taken advantage of. And, that's what spearheaded this.
Yep.
And if she can be taken advantage of, when she was a federal investigator, and part of her skills set of investigating, and she's very bright and educated in this, of course anyone can. So I would really encourage everyone who is in that kind of position to take a look at this young lady and to see that it could have crushed her and beaten her and made her want to walk away from real estate. And I'm sure that there were moments or milliseconds where that was the case. But she said to herself, no, I'm going to be an orca. And I'm going to wear these motherfuckers as my hat.
Here, I'll tell this story so that's got some context. I was telling Effie, as I'm dealing with the attempt to recover some money in a very horrible situation, I was listening to a podcast that was talking about some scientists that could not figure out what this pod of orcas were doing. They're doing this really weird behavior where they're killing these salmon and they're wearing them on their head. And at the end of their study, they concluded that they were just playing. And so it's kind of ugly, and I don't wish this on anybody. But if you're in a position where you can't do anything about it, at the end of the day, if you can just play, hey, if I can help other people, if I can have fun while doing it, if I can make sure I can wear some salmon on my head and help everyone else avoid this situation, that's where that comes from. So
Totally. And that's what I encourage every single one of you to try to do. If you're not going to get your money back, if you're going to be, they're going to be about that, that way, I do encourage you looking at, the behavior of orcas and just try to play with it, put them on the list, and do not let them take any more than they have already taken, because they've already taken your money. They've already taken your time. Don't let them also take your future hope. Instead, be a fucking whale. Be a whale.
I'd like to come back to something you said earlier, because I actually had a wonderful conversation with Wes about this morning when you said, like, hey, even Mel can get taken advantage of. Pace just shared his story where he got a Ponzi scheme. He got, scammed out of $1 million from a Ponzi scam artist. And so even this can happen to anyone, right? And so I would say you need to trust your gut. You need to follow processes. And if you're a professional that is trying to protect your investments and trying to maximize your investments, that needs to be procedural, and that procedure needs to be nuanced, because there's no blanket yes or no answers. And so if you do not have those processes for yourself yet, that's where you can outsource. Everyone talks about other people's money, OPM, but nobody talks about other people's time and other people's skills. And if this is not a skill you have, and this is not time you have to go through this process yourself, this is the service that I provide. And it's hard, when you're new and when you are desensitized to things because of our community and because of the family and things that maybe have you put your guard down a little bit. You realize, hey, in hindsight, you can say, oh, that was stupid. But in reality, when you're new to something, you're flailing and flopping just a little bit, it's easy not to trust yourself. And so if you're in that position where you're new and you don't know what you're doing, I would not say trust the leaders. I would say trust the process. And if you don't have a process, good thing I do.
Exactly, exactly. So I think if you can think that way and look towards what do the institutions do and take their lead in going, they have the underwriting um, team that you can't reach because they're looking to guard for the bank. So then that underwriting team, you need to have an underwriting team that's not party to this, that can check it and that can make sure. And they do conduct the background checks and the credit checks. So should you. And if you don't have the time to do it, or if you don't want to go into that side business, then you want to definitely talk with Mrs. Due Diligence and get that going. It's a consulting service, so it should be an expense, right? Business expense.
Of course. Yep. This is an expense that should be passed on to your borrower, passed on in your,
Right.
You need to structure this into your business model. Wes Grant says nobody talks about other people stabbing on their head.
I love it. I love it. Thank you, Wes. It is interesting, right? Because this has also got to do with psychology to a certain degree. Because look at where you are. You are in an incredible place in your life. And yeah, Pace does like to have us blow you up and stuff like that. And darn him, a little bit too much sometimes. But the point is that you have an incredible opportunity. And it came out of dealing with, okay, I'm not going to swear, dealing with things in that were very painful in the best way possible.
Yeah.
I am so proud of you. I am so honored, and I am also so I owe you. I owe you. So I am. Mike says there's an issue. What's happening? Effie isn't swearing. That's funny. That's funny.
Yeah. Do you mind if I tell the story of how we started talking?
No, not at all.
So basically, Effie goes to a mastermind, and some people were recommended to her. And those people were currently involved in their own very successful Ponzi scheme operation where they're just taking other people's money and pocketing it and basically leaving every single lender in the dust. And so they're just replacing other people's money with other people's money. So what is it? Robbing Peter to pay Paul. And so Effie was about to be Peter and I was Paul, but I wasn't quite sure if I was Paul yet. And this is early as I was trying to figure out what was going on. And I found out that the deal that I lended on, that was a promissory note secured by a deed of trust, was in fact not secured once I asked for the deed of trust to prove it. That deal itself was a sub to buy that they stopped paying the mortgage on and have lost into foreclosure. And they also took money from two other lenders. So there were three people secured against a property that was in foreclosure. So all of that money was where? Because they clearly didn't even pay the mortgage, much less buy all of the, Airbnb camp glamp sites that they were going to buy and furnish the place. And they weren't even paying their designer. But there was also a second operation, and that second operation was a BRRRR strategy. My example before of some fools pitching a BRRRR strategy, but they don't have any experience actually lending professionally or doing any flips professionally. And so they were trying to bring Effie in to pay me and private money lender back that lended on some properties that were worth $100,000. Well, I have those properties right now, and I can't even sell them for $5,000, by the way. This is when you trust those leaders that are doing all these big things that are just transferring money from the joint account to themselves. But
From the joint
so
account to themselves. What's wrong with that?
yeah, and so one disappeared and decided he no longer wanted part of the operation. Surprise, surprise. When I started pushing on, hey, I thought we were supposed to have properties by now, and we were supposed to have uh, these flips in progress, and nothing's happening, and all the money's gone. So what's going on? Um, and here comes Effie with all this money, and that's okay. Effie's gonna pay, and we'll be back on track with our operations. And my questions still weren't answered. And so I started doing some digging, and I started just seeing what was going on, and kind of used the dangling delicious salmon, which was Effie. Money, money, because if criminals like anything, it's money. And so all of a sudden, these people that were barely showing up to any meetings and running away when there were any questions to be answered were showing up to Zooms and telling Effie about these wonderful operations and how they were going to go. And I just didn't trust what I saw. And so I kind of pulled her aside and I said, hey, they're supposed to pay back distributions. The other one's supposed to have capital contributions. So I'm going to see if they actually do that before you join, because your money is a huge motivator for them. And I think if they're incapable of doing this in order to get the money, that's the huge, huge, huge indicator that what I suspect to be true, which is that this is all fraud, is true. And sure enough, they tried to take Effie's money without completing their agreements, and it ended up being just all the excuses in the world. And so it
So
then gave me the opportunity to dig through all the HUDs, all the things that I didn't have previously, all the HUDs, all the bank accounts and everything. And I could see they were just transferring money to themselves. And unfortunately, it was you coming on board, or being blocked to come on board, because I talk to you separately. I had to sign off on bringing you on board, and I didn't feel like bringing someone on board to a fraudulent operation was a very good idea to associate myself with. Sure, I would. Paul would have been paid back, but Peter would have been robbed, and then I would have been.
yeah. So this is there are some very interesting points in this story. First of all, I applaud Mel for sharing it. Okay, because I was saved. She's the one who got taken advantage of. And I am eternally grateful to her that she is a stellar kind of person to not allow the temptation of you're going to get your money back if you just keep your mouth shut and we get Effie in here, we can replace your money with her. Hold on a second, just a sec, relax. And the fact that she could use that to actually take a look at what was going on, to get them to do some kind of cooperation, is huge. It's just huge. But she has lost over, what was it, 140 thereabouts?
180 mine, 50 being my friends, and I'm taking care of my friend because that's not cool. So
okay, so 189, and how much can you get for those properties now?
Oh, 5 for one, and the other one just it's rough. It's rough. So I've got a whole lot of.
She's basically losing it all, and that temptation to get your money back is very real. And I am so indebted to her that she took a deep breath and she said, "No, hold on, come, I got to talk to you. You got to know what I suspect, and I don't feel good about you coming in without talking to you first." And when she did that, of course, I was like, "What? You know, no way." Uh, I have worshipped the ground that she steps on ever since, and I will help her every single step of the way, because it would have been very understandable for her to say, well, my friend, I owe her 50K. Let's at least get maybe that 50K for my friend to pay her back. And, I am, went through this. I think that Effie should be wise enough, to do her own due diligence, but she didn't. She stepped in front of me and she said, wait, I can't let this happen because I can't, in good, honest, um, her integrity would not allow her to. And, guys, $100,000 is a lot of money for me and for anybody. And for Mel, it's 190. But that action of saying, I won't allow this for the sake of money. My integrity is more important, made me not just worship her, but made me realize what a stellar person she is. It also made me realize that the people who had been held up at that mastermind, so what if they have been held up? We cannot do that. Pace has said, don't even trust me, that he doesn't trust even his grandmother. That you have to vet people. You got to vet the deal. I get it. I get it. And as far as I'm concerned, Mrs. Due Diligence has been very clearly vetted by her own sacrifice. So I am super, super, super glad that we have her at the helm, and that, Pace recognizes her value and how this needs to be cleaned up. So he said he's never going to hold anybody up again, but we know that that's not true. He can't help it. He loves people and he's going to hold them up when he thinks they're good. But you can't take that as a vetting. It's not a vetting.
Right.
So
Yeah.
Derek, I love Derek. He's saying we got to bring bats to kneecaps.
Yeah.
Asking nicely doesn't work.
I saw a meme that was like, how to politely ask your friends that owe you money to pay you back, and it was like a bat to
Yes, that's what it should be,
Yeah.
I don't mean it. Okay. Yeah, I completely get it. I completely get it. And, it pains me. It really pains me when I see people, like Julie, who has a heart of gold and, who's in this situation. It's like,
I feel for you. I know it's not fun,
Yep.
and it's not even robbing you of your money. It's your value and your time and your peace and your sleep, and maybe even some arguments with your spouse. I mean, money is like, problems with money are some of the top reasons for conflict, for suicide, and for isolation, which can also lead to suicide, because people will isolate when they're embarrassed, when they're mad, when they are, in debt because they don't want to go out and spend money and do anything. And so money problems are huge problems. And, these are things that affect you physically as well. And so, I feel for you. I know it's horrible. And that's, why I'm trying to change some of our standard practices, because at the end of the day, we can only protect ourselves. So
That's right. That's
nobody's
right.
coming to save us.
Yep.
Even me, because
Well,
I'm
you,
just gonna let you.
you saved me. You saved me. There's no doubt about that. And I'm indebted to you for it. But I do think, guys, that you can also take a lesson from Mrs. Due Diligence, in that she could have either allowed them to rob me to get herself paid back, which of course she really couldn't because of what she's made of. But she also could have gone into depression. She could have, cried herself forever.
Doesn't mean I did it for a while.
Yes, I know, sweetie. I know, I was there. But the point is, she reached in and she said, how am I going to make this a win? And she's like, wait, I freaking have the skills. Wait, it's so easy. You can see where the sense is.
Yeah.
Let's do it. And fortunately, she's gotten the support of the community, and the support of Pace. Deb, yeah, we got to talk, girl. And I would like for you to let me know a little bit more. And I'm going to ask Derek also, where is the muscle in wherever Deb is?
And I do actually have to go into the office.
Laura says in New Jersey, we got people. I love it. I love it. Okay. Any last closing questions or words on your end, Mal, or questions from the group? This has been incredibly valuable. I am so happy that you can wear those frickin' salmons and that you can play and have the joy. It would, by the way, on my posters, I, ask people, what's your favorite movie? I had a problem. I couldn't find a picture of Melissa not smiling. So I had to ask Melissa to give me a panned face, for her poster.
Yeah.
I think that's so funny. And I'm so grateful that they weren't able to take that from you.
Yeah.
Not at all. Not at all. Any last comments?
No, just thank you everyone for coming.
Okay, well, I thank everyone for coming too. And I will ask you if you could kindly, this is going to post before long, if you would be kind enough to come and actually make some comments on it. I understand that helps the algorithm.
Yes.
I'm learning. And to, if you haven't subscribed, subscribe and do the like. At least I'm remembering to say these things now.
Yeah.
I find them a little bit difficult, but anyhow. Okay, until next week, guys, we shall see you. And thank you for being here.